afternoon, dear participants. You are welcome to the 19th webinar organized by the Sri Lanka Export Development Board. Today, we talk about on a very important, timely and relevant topic. As you know, creating a brand to go international, a practical approach. Since you are planning to enter to the international market, branding is absolutely critical to a business because of the overall impact it makes in your company. We have few successful entrepreneurs who have gone into international market with their brands and have been successful in capturing the international market. Today, we will discuss with you on the Spa Ceylon case, a brand that was built from concept to launch to be an export brand. The practical learning and conceptual thinking that has taken the brand to over 100 global stores with a presence in over 22 countries. Let me introduce the resource person today, Mr. Shalin Balasuriya. He is the co-founder of Spa Ceylon, Sri Lanka, leading luxury lifestyle brand, which launched in 2009 and has since witnessed an exponential growth both locally and internationally. The brand that repositioned Ayurveda is now the largest luxury Ayurveda brand in the world with over 100 locations in 22 countries. Mr. Shalin also serves as a group director and the head of marketing for the Janet Group of companies and oversee the marketing operations of several of the largest categories in the Sri Lanka personal care industry, encompassing multiple brand portfolios and market segments, and also awarded as one of the Asia greatest brand leaders in 2019. Before we go for the presentation, please let me aware you about the order of the program today. The presenter will do the presentation for 45 to 50 minutes by sharing the slide. This time, Mr. Balasuriya is going to share with you a video also. Thereafter, we will have 5 to 10 minutes question and answer session where the speaker will clarify you on the areas you will not clear. So with that introduction, I will invite Mr. Shalin Balasuriya for his presentation.
Hi everyone, and good afternoon to everyone watching and to the EDB. Thank you to the EDB for setting up this webinar as part of the series of webinars to promote export out of Sri Lanka. For the purpose of this webinar, I'm going to guide you through just a few steps on, actually I'm going to focus on about 8 steps that I feel are very important in setting up a brand to go international. Spa Ceylon was a brand that was set up exactly for that. From its inception, it was conceptualized to be a brand to go international. So the thinking process right from the beginning was based on building something that had the legs to appeal to an international clientele. And my objective today is to share with you some of those tips so that it can help your brands. And if you have any questions afterwards, I'll be happy to answer them. I'll try and allocate even more time for questions as we get through this presentation. I think in order to give context to what I will be talking about, because I'll be drawing on a lot of Spa Ceylon examples, it's important that I give you some context as to Spa Ceylon if there are some of you out there who are not familiar with the brand. So in doing so, I think we'll start with a short video that profiles the brand.
Indulge in the world's largest luxury Ayurveda brand. Spa Ceylon. Nestled in the heart of the Indian Ocean lies the teardrop Isle of Ceylon, acclaimed since ancient times as an exotic tropical paradise that is rich in natural beauty. Here you find the 5,000-year-old science of life, Ayurveda. Deep-rooted in the culture of the island, it became the essence of the majestic well-being rituals that were practices in the grand palaces of ancient Ceylon. Spa Ceylon invites you to a royal indulgence with a range of products, experience stores, and spas. Spa Ceylon high-performance formulae are enriched only with the purest natural ingredients and blended with fine aromatic essential oils of flowers, herbs, fruits, and wood to purify, hydrate, treat, soothe, and calm. Spa Ceylon stores are designed incorporating a mix of Ceylonese royal insignia, traditional motifs, and jeweled hues, combined with contemporary design to take you through a unique multi-sensory experience. The royal health and well-being ritual practices in the palaces of ancient Ceylon are the inspiration for Spa Ceylon's signature treatments, where internationally trained therapists pamper discerning spa connoisseurs from head to toe while they experience the luxury of Ayurveda. Winner of multiple World Luxury Spa Awards, the Spa Ceylon experience is designed and detailed to perfection and is undeniably unique. The principles behind Spa Ceylon are the fierce love for and commitment to the well-being of our community, country, fellow creatures, and our planet. It is a commitment applied to every phase of the business and is most apparent in the formulation of Spa Ceylon products. Today, the brand is involved in community fair trade, sustainable harvesting of ingredients, wildlife conservation, prevention of cruelty towards animals, protection of human rights and the environment. Spa Ceylon, the world's largest luxury Ayurveda brand. A place where indulgence reigns.
Yes, and while that was the introduction to the brand itself, Spa Ceylon at the moment is just over 10 years old, and it is the largest luxury Ayurveda chain in the world, being in, at the moment, 103 locations across 23 countries now. So we're very proud of how the brand's grown, and it's been a very tactical, very thoughtful process in getting the brand there. And that is what I'm hoping to share with you in the next presentation to follow. So let's head on to the presentation. Yeah, I trust everyone can see that clearly now. So topic of the day, creating a brand to go international. What you see in front of you is the Spa Ceylon footprint across the world. We were hoping to double this in 2020, but or leading up to 2021. Things have slowed down a bit because of COVID, but we are well on our way to expanding this significantly in the months to come. Well, the first of the points I need to share with you is the big thing is to dream big. We think, coming from a small country like Sri Lanka, that it's difficult for us to go and make create waves in big markets, but we need to move beyond that and know that we can make a significant impact because we have so many resources to give. We need to focus as a country on exporting brands rather than commodities. Commodities are fine, but brands are where you are going to get those significant profits. Brands are what is going to give you the leverage to really make an impact. Take Sri Lankan tea, for instance, for such a long time, we were exporting the best tea in the world as a commodity until Dilma came along and created a brand of it, and then others followed. There was so much potential lost. And that's similar to what we've done with Ayurveda, where we've taken it, we've branded it, and we deliver it in a way that is meaningful to the consumer. So the first piece of advice is dream big, think of what you can do, think of brands, break it down into smaller goals and take it out there. So look at brands rather than commodities, which are going to offer you all that more revenue, all that more profit. The next one is identify your opportunity. What does the world need? How can you fulfill that need? And how can you fulfill that need better than anything else? Right? So what does the world need? How can you fulfill that need? And how can you fulfill that better than anyone else? So that is the question we asked ourselves when we started conceptualizing Spa Ceylon. So the first of it was, in the personal care space, we had some expertise. So we looked around internationally and thought, what does personal care need? What are the consumers looking for right now? When we identified that people were looking to go green at that time, it was a revolution where people were looking at herbal products. We also found that people are looking at older sciences. So we had an Ayurveda that was perfect for us. So what the world needed was healthier, greener products. How were we going to fulfill that need was through Ayurveda, and how we were going to fulfill that in a better way than anyone else is to re-engineer Ayurveda or adjust the presentation of Ayurveda when we created the new platform called Luxury Ayurveda, in taking Ayurveda to the world in a way that it was accessible or acceptable to an international client. Next big one is research. You have to know your consumer, you have to know your industry, and you have to know your competitor very, very well, and as well as your brand. So when it comes to consumers, you need to know their behavior. How do they buy? How do they sell? How do they consume information? Where do they go? How do they behave? What are the platforms they interact with? All that, and get to know your consumer in a very, very meaningful way, because then you can start developing products that are meaningful to them and also start marketing in a way that captures them without waste. So consumer demographics, taste, perceptions, and their media consumption is some very important things. Other one is know your industry. Now the thing with the industries, especially in this day and age, whether you're in the cosmetic industry, whether you're in the food industry, whether you're in whatever industry you are, trends are shorter, things change much more often than they used to. So you need to keep tabs with the industry. How is it changing? What is your industry going to be in 3 months' time, in 6 months' time, in a year's time, in 5 years' time? What's going to change? And you need to keep tabs of that. Because when you go in with your brand, you need to be relevant. Because sometimes you're planning a brand around what's happening right now, but 3 years from now, that might not be the case. So by the time you get your brand to market, things could have changed. So you need to know your industry really, really well. And in most industries, especially ingredient-based industries like food, confectionery, cosmetic, things like that, trends change. Ingredients that are trending now or fashionable now are considered healthy now. In another 3 months to a year could be considered not so healthy. So you have to change. So you have to know the latest research, what things are happening, so that your brand is very well positioned to handle these changes. New technologies can completely change industries. Look what digital did to the photography industry. Look what other new technologies coming in, like AI is going to do to a lot of businesses. So understand how technology is changing and where your product or service fits into that. The other is industry standards. What are the qualifying factors? What are the minimum qualifications your product needs to be in the industry, and how can you surpass them? A lot of the standards are going to dictate what markets you get into, how you control the entry to markets, and so on. So you need an in-depth knowledge of your industry standard, not just in your country, but in the markets you want to enter as well. Okay? Other big one is know your competitor. You need to know and track your competitors as much as you track your own products. That's something we do very, very well. Identify, if you're going into a market with a product, identify who are your competitors, or who are the brands already there. Identify their footprint. Where are their stores? Where are they retailing their products? What are the channels they're using? What is their structure? How long have they been there? How long did they take to grow? Because those are going to be indications as to what's going to happen to your brand when you go in there. Of course, the strengths and weaknesses of your competitors. Where are they strongest? Where are they weakest? And that allows you to position yourself accordingly so that your brand gets in a competitive space no sooner it enters a market. Yeah. So knowing your competitors, learning from your competitors are a hugely, hugely important part of being actually in a domestic industry, and in particular, an export industry as well. Identify a unique selling point. Now, this is very, very important. You can create products, Me Too products, all you want, but unless you go out there and stand out, no one is going to end up buying you, or not enough people are going to end up buying that product. So understand how your product is going to go and stand out in the market. What is the unique selling point that you bring to the market, that sets you apart from your competitors and engages your customer? Now, engagement is something that's very, very important, because we're living in a world that's very crowded when it comes to stimuli. It's very crowded when it comes to advertising, the number of products out there, where everyone's competing in a global market space, right? So you're actually vying for the attention of consumers, which means only brands that manage to engage consumers are going to move forward and do well. So what are the attributes of your brand that is going to engage your consumers in a different way? So a Spa Ceylon example, our unique selling points: identifying the opportunity of a world going green, identifying an opportunity of people looking for more natural alternatives. Our unique selling point one was the luxury Ayurveda. So Ayurveda is something we inherited in Sri Lanka, a huge science of over 5,000 years. But we needed to take it and present it in a way that was meaningful to an international consumer. So we needed to package it in a way. We need to keep the goodness of Ayurveda, but make it more luxurious when people use it. Make it as easy to use as any international skincare. And that is why we built this platform of Luxury Ayurveda and positioned it like that. So giving all the benefits of Ayurveda, but again, getting to the standard of international cosmetic products, personal care products, and presenting it in a way that an international consumer could interact with it. The other thing is we took aspects of our country of origin, in this case, Sri Lanka. If you look at our packaging, our story, every element of everything we do has aspects of Sri Lanka in it. Our colors, our art, our culture, our ingredients, everything came from here. So when we go and sit in a store in Europe or a mall in Russia or an airport in Malaysia, we stand out as very, very different. So that uniqueness comes out through our ingredients, through our culture, through our art, and of course through the Ayurveda. And that's what you have to figure out, what those unique attributes your brand or service has to stand out from the rest, to speak to a consumer and say, buy me because I am different and I can deliver. Yeah? The other big one is brand identity. Yeah, the look and feel of your brand that engages consumers on a multi-sensory level. Now, this multi-sensory level is something that's very important. Previously, when you thought of a brand, you thought of a brand logo or a brand color, which was fairly one-dimensional. It was very visual. But now brands need to be multi-sensory. So when you look at a brand, that identity should be reflected in every aspect of when you sell it. So you're looking at touch and feel. How does it feel when you touch your packaging? How does it feel when you touch your product? How does it feel when someone smells your product? How does it feel when someone visually sees it? What is the atmosphere you're going to create around your retail experience? Is there going to be a special sound attached to it? So the more sensors you engage, it's scientifically proven that the more sensors you engage of a human, the more it goes into memory. So picture is strong, but add fragrance to it, even stronger. Add sound to it, even stronger. Add feel to it, even stronger. So our job as brand creators is to make our brands or our brand experiences multi-sensory as possible, so that when someone has a brand experience, it goes into the consumer's memory and is locked in. Just some examples from the Spa Ceylon experience. If you look at on your left, you'll see some of our stores. You'll see how vibrant they are. If you look at the pillars and all the packaging, it's got Sri Lankan art on it, very vibrant. If you look at the lighting, we use a particular kind of wattage of lighting, so it's very soothing. When you walk into a Spa Ceylon store, there's a particular aroma, so even if someone were to walk in with their eyes closed, they'll know it's Spa Ceylon. When someone sees these floral motifs, they identify it as Spa Ceylon. We have created special music for Spa Ceylon so even when you walk into a Spa Ceylon, so you hear a particular type of music that tells a story about the brand. So it's a multi-sensory engagement. On the right, you'll see the spa experience as well, a very, very different kind of spa experience. And what you see is the kind of packaging and presentation we've done is very different to Western packaging and presentation. See, there is a misconception sometimes when Sri Lankan brands or Asian brands try to create brands to go international. They try to get too Western, which is actually a mistake, because we need to take what we have and take it to a Western platform so that we stand out. If we go looking Western, we are going to just get lost in the crowd. So it's very important to take an identity that's authentically yours when you go and stand in a market, and that's going to create all that more difference. You know? A little more into our product packaging. If you look at our product packaging, again, very luxurious feel, but keeping to the identity that it's Asian, bringing in a lot of art, culture, attributes that tell the story of the brand, but still keeping it rich, still keeping it luxurious, but very, very identifiable. If you pick up one of our boxes, you'll see that even when you touch a box in your hand, all those prints of the flowers and the leaves, you can actually feel to your hand. So it, again, bringing in those multi-sensory elements into it. The next one is brand story. Particularly in a digital age, your brand story is very, very important. Creating a brand narrative that tells you more than just about a product is a big part of the sale. If you look at successful brands across the world, they have a story behind it and how it came to be. And now in the digital age, people want to know even more about their brands. People want to have relationships with your brands. They want to know how you came to be, why you look like this, what is the story, how did the ingredients come about, how did this brand come together. So when you do build your brands, keep in mind a brand story is going to be more engaging to your customers. Because what's different from 20 years ago and now is everyone has a smartphone in their hands and they want to know more about the products they're buying, right? So stories that engage them, stories that gets them interested and intrigued are what's going to, again, lodge your brand into their memory and want them to learn more. So build a story around your brand. As far as the Spa Ceylon story was concerned, we built a story around the rich heritage of Ayurveda in Sri Lanka. We told a story about how the best form of Ayurveda was in the royal palaces. We had a king who was an Ayurveda doctor, and the palaces had access to the best fruits, the flowers, the oils, and so on. So the best Ayurveda was practiced in those palaces. And around that story, around that authentic story, we built this opulent, luxurious feel of luxury Ayurveda, and then delivered it in today's concept, saying that, hey, we have Ayurveda as practiced in the grand palaces. We want to make you, our consumer, feel like a king or queen when you use our products. So you're connecting your brand story and your consumer through every aspect of your brand. So it all also needs to tie in with your visuals, with your story, with your brands, with your ingredients and everything. So everything ties in together so that there is consistency, which I will talk about going forward as well. So think about the story of your brand. If you're a spice manufacturer, think about the story of that plantation you're growing in. How many generations was that? That could be a very rich story. If you are manufacturing oil, for instance, tell us about how oil was, how, let's say, coconut oil was produced for generations, about the mill. If you're doing some sort of a food product, tell us about what inspired, or tell the world about what inspired you to put those ingredients together, and build a story, build an authentic, believable story around it that will keep the consumer engaged and interested, and therefore want to know more and more about your brand. Create that relationship with the brand. Yeah, because we as marketers, as brand builders, our whole aim is to create relationships with our consumers, and the story plays a huge part in it. Other one that's a little more functional is find your ideal sales channel. Right? So your sales channel will depend on your product and where you want to position it. It will play a big part in your pricing strategy. It will play a big part in your positioning strategy. It will play a big part in how much profits you're going to make overseas. Right? So in certain cases, you will be selling through distributors or multiple layers of distributors. In certain cases, you might go direct to market through online platforms. In certain places, you might have franchise models. In certain cases, you might work with selected distributors. Figure out the channel that works for you. And the channel that works for you does not necessarily mean it will work for another product. It has to be very, very, it has to be a very well thought out answer based on who your consumer is and where that consumer shops, what kind of product you have, and what kind of storage, what kind of display your product needs, and of course the positioning of your product overall. So pick a channel that gives you all that. As a Spa Ceylon experience example, what we want to do is create a channel that allowed us to sell our products as a complete experience. So in order to sell as a complete experience, we needed to sell it in branded stores. So anyone who's walked into a Spa Ceylon store will tell you it's very, very different to walking into a very conventional. So like I said, there is multi-sensory engagement, which is very appealing and which really lends itself to the sale of the products. So in order to create that, one option would have been for us to go out and start opening our own stores, which would have been a good option. But opening stores, especially overseas, is very, very capital intensive, especially given the size and the look and feel of our stores. If you look at Sri Lanka, we own all our own stores, and we'll do it. But when it comes to a different country, it becomes a little difficult. So one of the key things we found was we needed a local agent. We needed a local partner to take this on. So we started a system where we started recruiting local agents, and in turn, the local agents would open a contractually obligated number of shops. Apart from the contractually obligated number of shops the local agent opens, we would also franchise the concept out, where other people who like the concept would be able to franchise from us, but we supplied exclusively through the local agent. Then we added on the franchise spa element as well, where they sign a franchise agreement with us, get the training from us, but essentially are supplied through the country agent. Yeah? So this worked really well for us because we wanted very good control of our merchandise and how it was presented. However, for different products, it could be completely different. If you're selling a brand food product, you might want to go into huge food wholesalers, like someone like Whole Foods, for instance. And that way your relationship is completely different, where you can sell direct to them. If you're doing a tech product or a product of different nature, you can probably go in direct online or work with guys like Amazon directly and go out there. Or maybe you go in with a local franchise chain which can have you there. Or maybe you go in with a department store chain that can have your product in there, which is fairly less capital intensive as well. So you have to pick the product that works, sales channel that works for you. Again, key things to look at is the positioning. Is your consumer interacting in that space? And also, what about the storage and the logistics of your product, perishability, all those things come into play when looking at the perfect supply channel for your product. Keep in mind your perfect supply channel from country to country could change drastically depending on the retail landscape of that country. So that is something you need to look into as well. The other big one is be consistent, right? This is very, very important. Once you get a brand into a country, you need to ensure that over and over again, you are supplying it at the same quality level. You're supplying it in the same manner, unless you're improving. So consistency is going to be very, very important, right? So you have to build processes around your brand that allows you to deliver the same thing over and over again, whether it's in terms of consumer experience, the product itself, the buying experience, all that. So there should be processes built into your production. There should be processes built into your sales channel. There should be processes built into your end interaction with your consumer. So a few things to help in the manufacturing side is also to get the standards that are accepted internationally. As for us, we've got ISO 9001. We have a GMP that's European approved, ethical business practices by the Chamber of Exporters, environmental management systems. So all these things are going to play a role, especially when European and US buyers want to buy from you, that you have these standards, especially when you're working with larger organizations. If you want to get into big department stores, if you want to get into big supermarkets, if you want to go get into those larger chains across the world, you have to ensure your standards are in place. So start with local standards and start building up the standards that are internationally accepted. Don't forget, in most cases, there'll be a registration process going into a country that will require you to register your product by going through some stringent testing processes. The most stringent testing we've done so far has been for Japan and the European Union, which will require a whole set of other standards and passing certain tests. So prepare yourself for that. Know what standards are expected from your industry and prepare yourself for that. Often when you're setting up the factory itself, or you're setting up your supply or your manufacturing setup, it's good to plan for it so that when you do apply for your management system or your standards, that it's not going to require you to totally disrupt what you've already created. Yeah, so think more long term. The last of what I'm going to talk about is to be agile, right? In an ever-changing consumer space, trends, technology, consumer needs will change frequently. And right now, it's changing faster than ever because information exchange is so much faster. So brands must be agile and keep learning, keep forecasting, and keep evolving to change. The changes could be ingredients, the changes could be standards in a country, the changes could be consumer tastes, the changes could be things like colors. But we have to be open to change, and we have to constantly keep learning from the markets. We have to constantly keep our eye out for information about our industries because change is something that's happening way faster than ever before. If you look at the things that we have changed over the course of the years, we've changed colors, we've changed the way we present things, we've changed ingredients. For instance, as a trend, coconut became huge about 5 years ago. And at that point, we didn't have a coconut specific range, but we went into production, got a range out there that was coconut heavy, and we have a whole range that's doing exceptionally well across the world based on coconut. So it's extremely important that you keep your eyes and ears open as a business person, as a brand person, as an exporter to the changes that are happening in the market so that you can change and evolve. The other big one is if you're in cosmetics or food or pharmaceuticals, one big thing that change are ingredients. Ingredients that are accepted today may not be accepted in time to come, and which means you have to be really quick. I mean, it happened with parabens, it happened with sulfates. You have to be very quick in being able to spot those out early so that you can start formulating your products using alternatives. Always keep an eye out for new technology. Always keep an eye out, especially if you're in retail, for fashion, for trends, because there's a certain amount of it reflected in your packaging as well. Keep an eye out on how you can improve your packaging. New technology brings in new packaging, new delivery systems. Keep an eye out on how consumer behavior is changing. As you know now, right now, a huge change in consumer behavior. A lot of people start working from home. A lot of people, so if you are an office furniture person, what do you do now? You start making small units for homes. A lot of people spending a lot of time at homes. How do you cater to them? So based on your industry, you need to always be agile to handle such changes. So those are my 8 points for creating a great or creating an export brand that has potential. I did not touch too much on the product side because creating amazing products or services is the absolute key, and that doesn't need to be reiterated. If you don't create great products and services, you're just not going, your consumer is going to figure that out and you're just not going to be able to sell. So that goes without saying, but the bigger picture is these other 8 steps should help you create a brand that could be potentially very successful internationally.
Thank you, Shalin, for the very informative and interesting presentation. We have few questions from the participants now. The first question is, how can you sustain your USP and for how long?
Like I said, you have to keep an eye out for what's happening in your industry and in the world, right? So it's ideal situation. Your USP is sustainable if you know how to handle changes, right? For instance, in our case, the Ayurveda and the home country elements can be sustainable as long as we're delivering on the other fronts as to the changing consumer needs and the industry trends and so on. So delivering on USPs is the big thing is to keep learning and evolving. You'll need to keep tweaking it all the time. But in most cases, if your USP is strong enough, that is going to hold for quite a while. But you might need to change certain elements around it to stay relevant to your consumer.
Yeah, thank you, Shalin. The second question is, in your experience, what countries are more compatible for JV model in terms of regulatory aspects, encouraging us to find partners without much of tax and regulatory costs?
Well, that too is changing. For instance, not just JV models, but in terms of tax and regulatory costs, there are countries that have been opening up and saying, come in and invest. If you are looking at countries that are going to give you advantages in terms of taxation and so on, in most cases, they're going to be developing countries. And it will have to depend a lot on your products. But if you're creating a product that's going to thrive in a developing country, then yes, go out and find those and get there. But don't let tax incentives, unless you're a big production unit or something like that, don't let things like tax incentives be the reason you go to a country, unless it matches your consumer or it gives you some sort of edge to produce and then maybe re-export from a country. Now, for instance, I know a lot of companies that have gone and set up in Ethiopia, because Ethiopia started booming and offered a lot of tax concessions for companies to set up. I believe some apparel companies have gone and set up there as well to produce out of there, because the labor is cheap, the electricity is cheap, tax concessions, all that. But for instance, it won't make sense for me because the kind of clientele or the consumer fit for our brand is not in Ethiopia at the moment, but possibly in 5 years' time, maybe. So it really depends on where you're going. In terms of ease of working, to be honest, the hardest country we work with is India, because it's like a tangled web. Getting anything done there is so hard. One of the fastest places to work for us has been Singapore. That being said, places like EU is finally fairly okay in terms of giving you the right information, but you'll find there are a lot of non-tariff barriers in terms of regulations that you have to get over. But if you can meet those standards, and if you can spend the money that goes into all that testing they require, they expect you to retest everything in Europe and have a responsible part there and so on. If you can do all that, then it's fairly straightforward to navigate. But some Asian countries like Singapore, Malaysia, and so on are fairly easy to work with. I hope that's a good enough answer. You can ask me again if you want me to fine tune on something.
Yeah. And also, we have another question. What were the factors that made you to choose to go with Ayurvedic products?
See, like I said right at the beginning, when we were very well tapped into the international personal care cosmetic market. So at that point, this was over 10, 12 years ago, when we were conceptualizing, everybody was looking for green alternatives. Everyone was looking for natural alternatives. It has even got accelerated even more now. People don't want to use synthetics, right? So in seeing that, we found that we had this amazing resources of Ayurveda in our country that we had been practicing for over 5,000 years, and there was so much for it, for your overall health, for your skin, for your hair, for everything. So all we needed to do is take that Ayurveda knowledge and put it in a way that you could use it for modern day problems, for skincare, for sleep issues, for de-stressing, and so on. So Ayurveda is an amazing resource. I mean, I personally started diving into Ayurveda since then as well, and learned so much. There's so much that we can give, and post-COVID, it's going to be even more important because people are looking at sciences like Ayurveda for answers.
We have a whole lot of questions for you, Shalin, today, that shows the interest they have in your presentation. The next question is, what is your view on supplying for a private labels? for private labels?
I think supplying for, well, we don't do it at the moment, but there was a time that we did private label product. I think, see, when you're starting off and you have a manufacturing facility and you can do some private label, it gives you economies of scale. It helps you in so many other ways. So private label is a great thing to do as long as it's not taking focus away from your core business and it's not taking time away from your core business. If you have the infrastructure to do private label and it's giving you economies of scale, it's letting you use your equipment better, it's letting you use your staff resources better, why not?
Yeah. The next question is, Shalin, how do you find the right partner for your brand in a foreign country?
Okay, in our case, we did several things. The initial of what we did is because our brand is one of those brands that needed to be showcased. We showed in the biggest cosmetic fairs in the world for years. We showed we still show at the biggest duty-free fair in the world again, which is in Cannes and Singapore. Then the big cosmetics fairs are in the Asian ones in Hong Kong, the other ones in Bologna and Italy. We did a few fairs in Turkey, in India, in South Africa. So find the right places to showcase your brand. And most often industry fairs of the right caliber are the place to go. I wouldn't go into selling fairs. Don't go into fairs that are selling product and so on. You know, you get this. Sometimes you get international trade fairs where everyone's coming to sell products because there's no focus. Go to B2B fairs where business people come in. Go as much as possible to industry-specific fairs because that's where you're going to get your core target. And when you do go, spend on exhibiting properly. Don't go and put flex boards up and set up a 10 by 10 or a 3 or half a 10 by 10 because it doesn't portray what your brand is. If you're going all that way, if you're taking the time, spend the money to do a good fit out, take the right information, have presentations ready, start writing to people before you get to that country and say, hey, we'll be there from this day to this day at this fair. Send them an invitation to it before you enter somewhere. Try and identify who your potential partners could be, invite them down, send them a pack of your products before you get there to get their interest. And the key here is to interact with the right people. So that kind of thing would really, really help.
Shalin, you said that we need to know any exporter who want to enter the international market to promote his brand. He need to have an update of the market conditions, consumer behaviors, all those things. So what are the ways to do research on a foreign country?
Okay, the easiest, least costliest thing to do, your first step should be get online. Right? There's so many resources that you don't realize till you get online and start looking at the country. Start looking at the country or start looking at a town or a city, start looking at the demographics, start looking at how many malls they have, depending on what your product is, of course. If you're selling a food product, start looking at how many restaurants they have, how many supermarkets they have, and so on. Now, what we do is we'll start looking at, okay, how many malls do they have, how many shopping areas do they have, what are the other factors do they have tourism coming in, is it going to be domestic driven, and so on. If you look at even demographic details, a lot of demo details are available for free online on most countries. So you can start there. Other big one is start pegging your consumer. If you are, for instance, if you are, just off the top of my head, if you were a Coca-Cola brand, track Coca-Cola or Pepsi and see where they are. So like us, we'll track other cosmetic brands similar to us and say, okay, where did they open their first store? Where did they open their second store? How many stores do they have? How much traffic do they get? How much money have they made? A lot of public listed companies will have their data out there. What is their spread? So there's a lot of learning you can do. You spend the right amount of time online with your team before you spend any money, right? So then once you want to fine tune, that's when you can go out, hire a research company there, It's always nice to do some focus groups, get some feedback on your products and packaging in particular. Something about packaging we learned very often, very early on. When we started, we had all black packaging, and we thought it was very premium and so on. But as we went into more Asian countries, we found that people were hesitant to buy black packaging for gifts because it wasn't auspicious. They wanted either bright colors or white or so on. So then, since then, we've changed colors and gone into brighter colors and eliminated black, for instance. So these are learnings that could have been gotten if we did our focus groups earlier and so on, which we do right now. Before entering a market, first we do the initial research online, then we'll have research companies, then we'll start doing focus groups and getting very good, valuable feedback, which is going to help you tweak your brand before you take it out there.
Shalin, EDB as the only government organization to develop and promote exports from Sri Lanka. We are also encouraging the Sri Lankan companies to go on branding. And is there any advantage in being a brand out of Sri Lanka?
It is. See, what people don't often realize is that there are a multitude of advantages. I'll start from the development side. On a development side, being in Sri Lanka, when you develop a brand, it's a great little country. It's small. We are small enough and big enough to test the brand. We've got a lot of demographics within the country. Whatever your brand is, in most cases, you can test it here and tweak it here. So it's a really nice incubation space for a brand. Also, our facilities in terms of data, electricity, all that, communication, all that is very, very good, which is great. Then once you get your brand going, we have, as a developing country, we have a lot of incentives in terms of free trade agreements. We have it with India, Pakistan. Then we've got the South Asian Free Trade Agreement. So there are a lot of these countries that we can go at reduced tariffs, which gives us a competitive advantage when we go there. Then we've got the GSP. I don't think a lot of exporters understand that GSP is way beyond just Apro. There's GSP available for a lot of our products going into Europe. So that is another good advantage coming from a developing country like ours, getting into European markets where you get a little more of a concession going in there. On top of that, right now in the West, if particularly going to the West, this whole internet culture has people hungry for discoveries, and Sri Lanka has been identified as an amazing exotic island. So going from Sri Lanka, if you're taking a product like spice or Ayurveda or something like that, which is indigenous to our country, there is a lot of authenticity, and people are looking for authenticity. There are brands trying to pass off using our heritage, but when you say we are from the origin, these ingredients are grown in our country, harvested in our country, manufactured here and sent there, it carries a lot of weight, and it gives you there's a lot of premiumness to your offering as well. So that identity of being from Sri Lanka, for instance, can function to your advantage tremendously, and that's something we leverage on a lot. So use the fact that we are from this beautiful country as an advantage, and don't think of it as a disadvantage, because there's a lot we can leverage on.
Thank you. The next question is, would you be kind enough to explain a bit more details of sustainable development goals in your marketing strategies?
Okay, so sustainable development goals, I can't get into it in detail, but rather than in marketing, it's more to do with production processes and our responsibility as a brand. So what we're working on our goals in terms of recycling, in terms of saving water, in terms of saving energy, in terms of community trade and empowerment. That's a fairly wide subject, but there's a whole lot of things we're doing on it. If you look at our websites, you'll see some of our goals as well, and where we are making our production facilities more, every year, making it more efficient so that there's less wastage, less water consumption, renewable energy, we are increasing the use of renewable energy, and within the next 5 years, it should be 100% on renewable energy. Our recycling goals, right now, most of our PET is recycled and repurposed into brushes and yarn. So that is another important thing. Those aspects are important to consumers as well. So and to the world we live in. So that's something we are consciously doing. In terms of above and beyond that, we are also doing work on animal conservation, forest conservation, bird life, and things that affect our island home, and we will continue to do that also.
We have few more questions, Shalin.
Yeah.
Which avenue did you find to be most successful in finding agents abroad?
See, again, it's for our brand. It was nothing compared to them seeing the brand one-on-one. So it's a mixture between those that came to Sri Lanka and saw the brand, and those that saw us at the larger exhibitions, who interacted with the brand. So the big thing is, it all depends on your brand. If you're making food, get them to taste it. If you're making clothes, get them to wear it. If you're making cosmetics, get them to put it on. Get whoever you think is your right partner to interact with your brand. Putting up boards don't really do the job. Get them to interact and engage with the brand. That's the key. So figure out the best way to do that. In our case, this was either in our stores or in a specific stand that we did, which has the multisensory experience of the brand, and that tells the story better than anything else.
I think we'll be able to answer for another question. What would you say was the biggest setback in your branding process?
Well, initially, the branding process, the biggest setback. Well, I didn't see, I can't tell you anything that was a huge setback, but I think the big challenge we had initially is that we were building a premium brand, and before we went overseas, we had to make it work to some extent in Sri Lanka. And convincing Sri Lankans 10 years ago that a Sri Lankan brand could be premium, convincing Sri Lankans that Ayurveda could be luxurious was quite tough. So that was our biggest branding challenge, in how to present something homegrown to Sri Lankans and have them accept it as good as international and as premium. And thankfully we managed to do that, and through that also take it outside of Sri Lanka.
Thank you very much, Shalin, for doing a very interesting and a very informative presentation today. Before we wrap up, on behalf of the Sri Lanka Export Development Board and the participants today, I really appreciate and give a very thank you for coming here and doing a very important presentation for the participants. Before we wrap up, I would like to remind our participants that you can see our previous webinars through our website, www.srilankabusiness.com, and YouTube channel. So we'll wrap up for today now, and we'll meet you with another important session in our next webinar scheduled on 8th October 2020.
Yeah, just before we finish up, if I could just add as well. Thank you to the EDB for doing this, doing all these seminars. I have to attest that the EDB has been supportive to us as well, as when we've had issues, and that's a great resource to draw on. So when you do need assistance and information on countries and so on, EDB is another good source to contact, because through the embassies and so on, they can get you resources and information and contacts, and they've been happy to do that. So please do contact them. The team at the EDB is very efficient and has always been very helpful. So thank you to you, and thank you for having me. If any of you have more questions, don't hesitate to contact me personally. You can get me on one of my social media handles or through the company. I'm personally, I'm very happy to help Sri Lankan brands go international, or Sri Lankan entrepreneurs. And we as a company are very happy to help Sri Lankan entrepreneurs as well in whatever way we can, by sharing our expertise or insights. So feel free to contact us, and thank you.
Thank you very much. All the best to you.
All the best, Ibon.